under both Republican and Democrat, we have seen debt continue to increase. And I will tell you, this is how breathtaking this problem is. When I came into office in January of 2007, the national debt was $8.67 trillion. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of zeros behind those numbers. That's jaw-dropping, $8.67 trillion. Do you know what our debt burden is today after the debt ceiling vote this summer?
14.8.
It is $16.7 trillion. Hold on to your seats. In 4.5 years, the debt increase almost doubled in 4.5 years. That's why this summer I was one of the lone voices in the wilderness of Washington saying, don't increase the debt ceiling another $2.4 trillion. In other words, don't give them an advance on the nation's credit card of another $2.4 trillion. We had enough money coming into the Treasury to pay the interest on the debt. We didn't have to default. Remember, we lost our AAA credit rating. Do you remember that?
Yes.
That's because the people who give the credit rating said, I don't see Washington, D.C. is serious about dealing with debt. And they were right. I said, let's be serious. Let's be adults. Because this isn't monopoly money. It's real money. It's so real that the International Monetary Fund tells us this is the last election, 2012, when we will be the economic superpower of the world. This is it. In the next election, who will be the economic superpower of the world? China. That's right. Oh, see, everyone here knows it. It's China. Are we going to stand for that?
No.
Are we going to be the first generation in 235 years that fails to pass a better economic climate to those kids, our kids, your kids, the first generation in 235 years. Generally speaking, are you better off than your parents were? Do you live at a higher standard of living? I do. Than my parents did? I do. My parents lived at a higher standard of living than their parents lived. I remember my great-grandparents. My grandparents lived better than my great-grandparents did, generally speaking. But this is the first time that we can look at a break. I mean, honestly. I have 5 biological kids. That's why I'm here tonight. As a mother, I love those children. We raised 23 foster children in our home. We have broken hearts for at-risk kids. We love them. We took them into our home. I have a big investment in the future. We raised 28 kids. I am the older one in this group. Be a nation that goes into decline. I'm not, you're not. That's why you're going to walk the precincts. That's why you're going to elect good people to be your representatives, because we can't settle. How many candidates, honestly, do you think are going to do what they say and say what they mean? I have a proven record for 5 years in Washington. I may not have been the most popular politician. Who cares? It's all about standing up. I will do what needs to be done to administer the tough love, because quite frankly, we have to cut the spending at the federal level by 43%. We are overspending in this debt by 43%. I'm just going to ask you a question. How many months could you make it by overspending 43%? Think of what you bring in a month. Let's say you're a high roller and you bring in $10,000 a month. So what if you're spending $14,000 a month? How many months can you go on like that? Well, guess what the federal government is? Well, you're looking at it. We're the government. We're the government. And so that means, again, it's not monopoly money. It means you have to go out and get another job. It means you have to maybe go out and get a third job, because somebody's got to pay that debt off. This is the issue of this race, and it hasn't even been talked about yet. Debt. Debt. It's sinking Greece, it's going to sink us. This was a historic week, and to think in that debate there wasn't one foreign policy question other than dealing with foreign aid, because here we saw saw an international terrorist assassination attempt on U.S. soil in our nation's capital, potentially in a public restaurant, this was found out, and this could have been hundreds of people who would have lost their lives. This would have looked like the devastation that Israel has had to endure. We were looking at seeing that with Iran, a known rogue enemy, so much so that they're identified as a state sponsor of terror. That's how they view the United States, that they'd be willing to do that in our nation's capital. We are now stretched thin because the President of the United States, quite frankly, has a policy of leading from behind. This was the administration's own words. Their policy in Libya was leading from behind. Now, I oppose the Libyan effort. We had no business being in Libya. None whatsoever. Secretary of Defense Gates said there was no vital American national interest in Libya. We shouldn't have been there. Also, with this current effort where Uganda asked us to come in and be in 4 African nations and deal with the problem that's been going on for 20 years. President Obama says there's an American vital national interest, but he hasn't said what that interest is. While we're dealing with Afghanistan and Iraq, and last Sunday we saw with Iraq that the Iraqis, where we have expended a high amount of toil and blood and treasure, now the Iraqis are saying to us, in effect, we're kicking you out because we're not even going to give immunity to the 5,000 soldiers that would be left, American soldiers that would be left at the end of the year. Why is that? Because Iran intends to be the dominant party in Iraq. After all we've expended, we're getting the boot, and Iran is going to be moving in. This is a dangerous situation. I am privileged to sit on the House Intelligence Committee. We deal with the nation's classified secrets. And I will tell you, this election will be about jobs and the economy, as it should be. But I will also tell you, as someone who sits on the Intelligence Committee, I am probably more concerned about the threats to our national security today than any other issue. And while I have to be circumspect about what I say about that issue, this is a highly volatile time, and the President has made us far more weak and far more vulnerable because of putting daylight between the United States and Israel. That sent a signal to the rest of the nations of the world, and now hence you see the rise of the volatile hostilities. So what will I do about defense? Number one, that's why I was fighting so hard this summer about not increasing the debt ceiling, because the result was the defense community will be taking the chin with a $500 billion cut when we can least afford it, when the President's put us in 2 more conflicts. This can't be done. It doesn't make sense. He puts us in more conflicts and then takes away the resources. I won't do that to our military. I admire and respect our men and women in military. I won't put them out there and not give them the resources they need and deserve. This is madness to do this. And so what we have to do is, it isn't the defense can't pull back. They can't. There are measures and there are things that we could do to look at procurement, for instance, where we can have savings. But quite honestly, we have to look at what we're involved in. We shouldn't be sending those troops to Uganda, in my opinion. We shouldn't be in Libya. We need to get out of those conflicts. We need to tell NATO, stand on your own 2 feet. We're not doing your defense here. Their defense. We can't borrow 43 cents on the dollar that we're spending to pay for their defense. Those days are done. They're done. The other thing is, I said this last night, Iraq and Libya need to be repaying the United States for liberating those countries. They're oil. Policy. I believe very firmly. I stand for America, and I am a hawk. But I also believe that I will only commit America's bravest men and women in harm's way only if there is truly an identifiable, vital American national interest. And then when I commit them, we will go in with full force. We will get the job